Well, we've often heard of PayPal really deplatforming people, refusing to do business with them, allowing them to do business and get payments from PayPal. It's really a big scandal. It's not just Facebook and Twitter that's censoring people, but when it comes down to the bottom line, when it's your money and you're being cut off from banking, that is a serious issue. With us now is John Sabal. He is the founder of the Patriot Voice, which is a conservative event organization. They put on events. And he was recently denied the ability to do business by collecting money through a payment processor called TSYS, which is headquartered in Columbus, Georgia. They're actually the third largest, or they are the largest third-party payment processor in America. John is with us to talk about his case, how he has been denied services from this company because they are claiming that his event company is somehow racist. Also joining us is his attorney, Paul Davis. He's a managing attorney representing John on this case. Welcome to the show. Thank you guys both for being here. Really appreciate it. I want
Thank
to
you
start
so
off
much,
with
Jen.
you. John, tell us about your company and how it is considered racist by TSYS to the point where they've decided, oh, we're not going to do business with you. Tell us about your company.
What's really wild about that statement is we actually do these large top shelf Patriot events. And it's the furthest thing from racist because we have all different races and creeds on our stage. Black, white, we've had Jews on our stage. I mean, we've had all different types of people all together. So the fact that these companies think that we're some kind of racist is just laughable. All that we're trying to do is bring people together in difficult times with pertinent speakers who, our conservative base wants to hear from. So we started
So
this
what
in
is what is
2020.
the what yeah, what is the focus of your events? Like why would somebody sign up and go to an event, and what are they going to see at one of your events?
So the whole reason why we're doing this is to just get people's spirits up in times that are obviously very perilous for our country. A lot of people kind of are confused about a lot of things that are going on, and they want to hear from speakers that are giving pertinent information about those events, right? So, and it's also about, camaraderie, getting together and just bringing people together where it's interesting because we've actually had some major relationships form out of our events, including marriages. And it's just a lot of fun, as you can see on the screen right there. I mean, people are just having a bunch of fun dancing and jumping up and down, and they're getting to be around people who understand them. I think that that's the most
Okay.
important thing, is that we all feel the same way about the direction our country is going. And unfortunately, a lot of the payment processors, I guess, are on the opposite side of that discussion. So,
Okay, so tell us then what happened with TSYS. So you were putting on an event, and give us the story of what happened.
well, so TSYS, we got set up with TSYS through actually a broker, and we didn't have any idea that this was going to happen. This happened after our other payment processor dropped us, funny enough. So we were signed up with TSYS, and then a week later, we were literally dropped. We got an email. It said, termination, Patriot Voice. We're basically not going to do business with you anymore. And interestingly enough, my girlfriend called about it, and they slipped and said that we're a, quote, exclusionary business. I don't think they were supposed to say that, but they did. And
Ah.
come to find out that that apparently means we're racist, and that people shouldn't do business with us. So I'm not sure exactly how they got to that conclusion, but that's interesting.
Right. Yeah. I was looking through your website and I saw that a lot of the speakers are of a variety of faces and gender. You've got men, women, black, white. You've got
Yes.
Hispanic. You have the variety of speakers on your website. Also,
Yes.
I saw some footage of your event where you have people of all races even speaking at the event. I didn't see any symbolism that was racist or anything that looked racist in any way, shape, or form. So is it just that you're conservative? Is that what, do you think that that's why they claim you're racist?
I think that really is why, because like you said, we do have people of all different races, creeds. We even have a church service on Sunday. We're openly Christian. I mean, obviously, that's unfortunately looked down upon in today's society, and I guess at that level, they want to shut us down even more because of that. But yeah, I mean, we don't have any kind of hateful messaging or any kind of questionable things that would suggest that we should be shut down because of it.
Uh-huh.
They claim that we're
So
a quote. Go ahead.
do they consider, because you're conservative, and I saw a sign on that last video there said Trump, do you think that is it because maybe you're Republicans who vote for Trump, support Trump? Is that potentially the
Yes, we're
reasoning?
very. Yes, I would say that definitely has something to do with it. We are openly MAGA. We openly support President Trump,
Okay.
and we do have messaging that supports him in our videos on stage and stuff like that. And that's one of the things that really brings us together. Is it's kind of hard for MAGA conservatives to get together anymore for fear
Hmm.
of being canceled or ridiculed by the left. It's a really unfortunate situation, but we're just
Right.
trying
Okay.
doing our best together.
And so for this particular event where they dropped you, what happened to your event then at that point? I mean, how far away was the event? What was the consequences of them doing that to you?
So the event was scheduled for January 30th of this year, and we got canceled by TSIS in December. I'm sorry, November of 2022. So the consequences were great because we didn't have another alternative set up. After being canceled by our first one, we got on into TSIS, right, without a contract. There was no contract involved, so it was kind of like a blind trust thing. We had no idea what we were getting into. Our broker just signed us up with TSIS, and so when we lost the ability to transact for ticket sales and stuff
Hmm.
like that, was devastating, and we couldn't hold the event at that point.
Wow. Okay, let's get into the legal of this. We're going to talk to your attorney, Paul Davis. So, Paul, give us the breakdown legally from their perspective. How are they able to just drop? I mean, as John just said, is that his girlfriend was able to get them to say, "Oh, it's because they were exclusionary," which is essentially racist. But that was in a phone call, right? That wasn't on the record. That wasn't like in writing. So, what is their reasoning? How can they get around? How do they get away with this? And do they do this to other groups that are not conservative? They just decide who they're going to do business with in this way.
Well, unfortunately, a lot of people make the or have the misconception that somehow the First Amendment prohibits private companies, from discriminating against people on the basis of their beliefs. And it's actually, the First Amendment only protects you against the government. So there's not
Right.
really a clear-cut law against payment processors doing this. But in this particular situation, they the TSIS knew the purpose of this agreement. Now, I do want to take issue with, I told John, don't worry, you're probably not going to say anything to screw up the lawsuit. But he said there is no contract. The contract was between, so we are actually suing them for breach of contract. That is one of the claims.
Okay.
It's because the Patriot Voice, John's company, was a third-party beneficiary to the contract between the broker and the payment processing system. So the legal claim here is based on the fact that the Patriot Voice relied on the fact that TSIS had agreed to be their payment processor, and they had incurred expenses. And when you have detrimental reliance, which is what we call it in the law, then you can have a cause of action. And the main cause of action in this lawsuit is deceptive trade practices, because TSIS did not disclose that they could just willy-nilly kick you off their platform for being exclusionary, whatever that means.
Yeah, how do we stop companies from doing this entirely? It seems like certain businesses shouldn't be allowed. I mean, I get it that the First Amendment protects you from the government, but there are some companies that, like utilities that are essential to our ability to function. And one of those utilities I would say is banking or payment processing. These are the types of things, or like internet service, having the ability to connect to the internet, having a cell phone. I mean, there are certain things that, yes, they are private companies, but imagine if, T-Mobile or Verizon tomorrow just decided to get rid of any customer they didn't like their political affiliation with. There's got to be some sort of mechanism, or maybe is it just that it has to be taken to court and a judge has to rule and there has to be precedent that is set that says certain companies or companies just cannot be discriminating based on political ideology?
Yeah, so there is a whole body of law referred to as common carrier law. So that's the common carrier laws. That's why an airline can't just kick you off because of your political, or discriminate against you because of your political views, or a cell phone company. There are laws against that, but they're passed generally at the state level. It would in this particular situation for payment processors, you would either need the state that you live in to pass a law banning this type of practice. We actually, to give an example of a law that has done this, we have a law down here in Texas against social media censorship, and it is based on this body of common carrier law, basically saying the state does have the authority to regulate common carriers, which are, for people that don't know, I mean, it's easy to understand, but a common carrier is just something in society that everybody uses that's really a necessary service, like your utilities, your transportation industry, things like that. So the state can regulate things like this. Congress could do it as well, because under their powers, the Commerce Clause power. So we just need states and the federal government to pass laws against this.
Against them specifically discriminating for political viewpoints.
Correct.
Yeah.
And there may be
That
some
seems
states
like
that have such a law. I'm just not aware of it.
California, I think, is one that actually, I think in California's discrimination, you cannot discriminate for political viewpoint, which I'm sure there's a lot of people in California who wish they could. Right? They're like, oh,
Yeah.
those conservatives.
Exactly.
Right. But it seems like in a democracy, it's actually very strange when it comes to protected groups. It's really strange that, in my viewpoint, the very first protected group that should have been protected from the very beginning on a federal level in a democracy would be different political viewpoints. You'd think that they would have built that into the Constitution, where they're saying you cannot discriminate people for dissenting against government, for having different political viewpoints. That should have been baked into the Constitution. It's such a shame that it wasn't, actually, because that just seems so fundamental to the entire point of being, how we came about, and the entire idea of a democracy. But yet, in so many places, it's not actually a protected group. They'll protect every other group, except for if you have a certain political viewpoint, then they can discriminate against you. I mean, imagine if Uber, you try to get into an Uber car and they're like, oh, nope, you can't get in because we don't like how you voted. I mean, that's insane. That's insane and totally antithetical to democracy. What's that, John?
I have a feeling.
Yeah,
That's coming.
Yeah, I think that's coming too.
Let's talk about
to answer your question, though, I think.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think the reason that wasn't enshrined in the Constitution, and we don't have robust laws against political discrimination by private entities, is because it is so fundamental to American society. And I think the framers just didn't comprehend that private businesses would discriminate against people because of their viewpoint. It's just so abhorrent to our society. So this is something that a territory we've gotten into that the law is just behind on it, and we need to catch up.
Yeah. Maybe they just thought, well, this is like a no-brainer. So why does it need to be said? But it turns out it does need to be said, and we're finding that out quite a bit. John, I want to go back to what has gone on now with this payment processor in regards to the money. What we've heard about with a lot of other organizations when they deplatform or defund or however you want to call it, they often keep their money and they'll hold it for a while. Has that happened to you in this particular case?
Yes. Yes, it has. In fact, part of the email, the termination email that TISA sent, said that they're going to hold on to our money as part of a quote risk assessment for up to 180 days. That was back in the end of November. It's out now, almost.
I think you froze on us,
Oh
Paul. So
no,
you're going to have to pick
you
that up.
froze.
You're going to have to pick that up for us.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm happy to
so
pick up the slack.
yeah, so you tell us, Paul, like what they're holding on to the money. How do they get away with that?
I mean, it's that part really. I mean, that's going to be a contractual issue. So likely, I have not seen the contract between TSIS and the broker, which I think was called One Source was the broker. So we'll need to
Hmm.
get a copy of that contract and see if that entitles them. But that would be where they would get the authority to do that. You would sign, when you sign up for their service, you would say they have the authority to do that, and it's a contractual thing. So it just
Yeah, this
you got to read the fine print in these contracts.
I guess, but what can you even do about it? I mean, they tell it, I get it. You read the fine print, but with so many of these companies, you don't really have a choice. It's like, yeah, I need to get this surgery done, or I need to get this service, and I need this cell phone. And so you get these pages and pages of fine print, and nobody really reads them because you need this service. You need this, whatever it is. You can't really go without it. And then they're able to bake in these really weird rules. I mean, it's just so annoying. I think the annoying thing about this case, and I'm hearing you, and you're a lawyer, so it's always, I get this. And I get this a lot with a lot of the COVID cases where we're trying to get, they're trying to get courts to rule against mandates, for example. And what happens is, I hear you, you're going after like what's in the contract, what they can and can't, but it's like what we really want is for these companies to not be able to do this thing. We want the case ruled on the merits, right? Of do not
Right.
discriminate against people for their different political viewpoint. Is there a way for that in this case to happen rather than it being some, like with the COVID cases, it's always like, well, it's because the ruling was capricious and arbitrary. And so that's why this mandate is going to be dropped. And it's not like, no, wait a minute. What about just my civil liberties and the ability to do what I want, when it comes to what you're going to inject into my body? That's not what a lot of those anti-mandate cases are being won on. They're being won on technicalities. And it sounds almost like that's what's happening in this case as well. Am I wrong on that?
Well, just to address the general question, the premise of your question, you're talking about how wrong it is for these companies to basically force their users, like an entity like the Patriot Voice would really have no bargaining power if this is a clause that's common to all payment systems. And we call that in the law a contract of adhesion, which they're disfavored in the law. So there is a route to get around contractual provisions like this, where it's basically just like a take it or leave it type of provision that's extremely unfair to the person signing the contract. But that's going to be heavily in the discretion of the judge. The judges have a lot of discretion to rule on whether or not to enforce a so-called contract of adhesion. And I can give you a perfect example from a recent case. I represent a client who did sue under this Texas anti-censorship law, and our case just got transferred to the Northern District of California, San Francisco division, because it turns out Meta Platforms has it's Facebook and Instagram, has a
Mm-hmm.
forum selection clause in their contract, and we argue this is against Texas public policy. Like, the Texas legislature did not contemplate that these cases be litigated in Northern California, where we're almost certainly going to lose up there. So, but the judge ruled against us. So you have to make these arguments that, hey, this is a really one-sided contract, and I was forced to sign it basically because I had no other choice, or I couldn't use the service, and it's unfair, and it's only to oppress me. And that is an argument. It's just going to be in the discretion of the judge.
Oh, yeah, I don't like that. I don't like that much at all. John, what has gone on now with your company? Have you been able to, are you okay? Is your company, I mean, if you had to cancel this event, they're holding some of your money. Where are you guys at now as a company?
As a company, we're pretty much on pause right now, because that was very devastating financially. And we're still trying to recover from that. And I think we're pretty far away from that, because we put almost $400,000 of our own money into investing into this event to make this work. So, I mean, yeah, it's caused a lot of problems. Very unfortunate, but
Yeah,
caused
that
a lot of
is
problems.
right. That's have you found another payment processor that will work for you? I mean, will work with you? And then going forward, when you talk to them, what do you say? By the way, we're ultra MAGA. Like, is that going to be a problem for you? Are you going to call us racist and cancel us? I mean, how do you go
Well,
about moving forward?
thank God, we found Old Glory Bank. In fact, the CEO reached out to us. We were one of the first members. It's a new bank that was started by John Rich and Ben Carson and those guys, some pretty big MAGA guys. Larry Elder's involved as well. And so they're 100% in favor of a parallel economy, because they see what's going on too. That's why they created Old Glory Banks, to not cancel. So conservatives wouldn't be canceled any longer, right?
Yeah.
So I thank God that we have that as an alternative for the next event. Absolutely. And even as a personal bank.
Yeah. Well, that's also a
Time though.
scary. It's a scary proposition to have a parallel economy, just because, for a lot of reasons. But one of the big reasons is that is scary for someone like myself who doesn't fit in either political camp cleanly. Liberals don't like me, and neither do conservatives, quite frankly. I mean, I just have viewpoints on both sides that people do not like, and I get canceled from both sides regularly because they don't like a particular viewpoint. So it's scary, those of us who are politically homeless or independent, which is, by the way, the majority of the country. So the majority of us would be like, where do we go if they find out we voted a certain way or we have a certain viewpoint and they don't like us? And, where do we get to do our payment processing?
Well, I think the idea of a parallel economy is to kind of protect conservatives, right? Because we are the ones who are facing the attack. Let's be honest. I mean, all of big banking, big tech, all of those companies are the ones who are not being affected by it, because they're the ones who are running the show, right? We're the ones who have to face the oppression from that. So I don't think you should have to worry about that so much.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm old enough to remember when liberals were actually the ones who were persecuted and not able to do anything. I mean, I grew up in Idaho, and liberals were absolutely shunned in a lot of ways. If you were pro-choice, or if you didn't believe
Yeah.
in God, or there was like a lot of groups of people that very much did shun and want to strong arm. The authoritarianism when I grew up was on the right, and it was trying to force people into their way of thinking, their belief system. And now it's totally flipped, and it's on the left. And I'm watching this, it's like bizarro land to see it. Instead of making progress, it just switched,
Yeah.
rather than people just accepting each other and moving on with their lives and live and let live. So yeah, but I agree with you right now. Definitely, big tech is on one side of the aisle politically, and they have all the power. I mean, they have a massive amount of power.
Yeah, and
So
when it comes like the payment processors and stuff like that, there's large shadow organizations. I don't know if you see what's going on with Twitter right now with the ADL exposure, for example.
yeah,
The ADL pulls a lot of strings, okay? Organizations like that, the Southern Poverty Law Center, those organizations are pulling strings and telling these payment processors, hey, those are conservative people, don't do business with them. So there's a lot of that going
yeah.
on. And I think that what's important for the American people to understand is that, this isn't so much a left-right issue as it is there's, real problems that we have to face that, we're finding out
Yeah.
about right now.
Yeah. I mean, it is. And I do think the pendulum unfortunately swings. And then when one side gets the power, they start doing it to the other side. And it just seems to be a never ending cycle, rather than one side saying, we're not going to do this to you. You could do this to us, but we're not going to do this to you. Instead, it's always like, payback's a bitch. And here we are, but best of luck to you, John. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Paul, thank you so much for being here as well, and informing us about this. Is scary. I mean, this
It's
level
very
of
scary.
censorship and deplatforming, and again, whatever word you want to use, this is very scary. This is beyond just social media, which is scary enough, once they get to the money and they can affect your bottom line, that is a very, very scary place to be. And unfortunately, just seems to be ramping up and not toning down. So thank you both for being on the show tonight.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Kim,
you,
for
Kim.
having us.